I always wanted to say this. This is Switzerland speaking. Our points go to, you know that? It's happening this weekend, Eurovision Song Contest. So that was just because I'm so far off with this remote installation being here. Actually, I wanted to participate in person, so I'm sorry that I cannot be there with you. Okay, so let's start. So my name is Darjan. I'm from Superdot. We are here in Basel, in Switzerland, and we are a studio for information design. And today I have the pleasure to introduce you actually our newest project, our book. And I will try to use this 18 minutes very wisely and to show you as much as I can about the concept, the background, and what we did. Let me first try to share my screen. Okay, here we go. I hope this works. I just need to see this. Do you see the presentation in full screen? Yep. I guess I see. Yep, yeah, works. Good. Super. So, grüezi, that's in Swiss meaning hello. On the screen you see on the left, you see Aaron. He's in the team. You see on the totally on the other side, Sarah. And with me, Nicole. So we co-founded the studio 10 years ago. And now actually we're about to show you our biggest journey. And that's the book. The book, it's called Visualizing Complexity, Modular Information Design. And it just got delivered last week. So we are super excited. And actually, I'm also very excited to talk first time in front of an audience. Actually, I don't see you, but probably I will hear you and explain a little bit more about our last 2 years where we actually worked on the book. Maybe the first thing, a little bit of background. What you see on this image, it's an exhibition in Vienna. Reason, Vienna, I'm coming from Vienna. And I came across this image when I was finishing my master's. I studied business informatics. And I was actually just mind blown that there has been probably a time when people try to explain things visually. The person who was responsible for this is Otto Neurath. He's in Vienna. And I was just asking myself, why got this lost? So kind of in 1922, this exhibition happened. And I was just asking myself, why don't we do this? Why don't we learn this? I studied business, but somehow I should also be able to visualize. So that made us come together years ago and start thinking about new approaches to combine content, be it numbers or text, with design, and trying to explain things so that people understand. The first kind of shocking part is that today, when we talk about data visualization, it is something like this. So there are a lot of books which are actually explaining do's and don'ts, use for this kind of data, the following diagram type, don't use red because it's an alarm color, and so on. So that means there is actually a lot of rules on how to do proper scientifically or not scientifically diagrams. And somehow there is another direction, and that direction is actually the following slide, and that's the direction of, especially here in Switzerland, of Swiss graphic design tradition. So there is this actually big history in Switzerland about this, we would maybe probably say minimalistic way of doing design. But the interesting part is this one now slide is showing one exercise students do in Swiss design schools in the beginning. And the exercise is very simple, and that is use just black and white, use lines, and in a grid, always try to find a new way to fill this square. And actually, the reason why you do this is that actually from one line, from the vertical to the horizontal, you have to develop variations. So kind of thinking about new ways. And the more you do, the more creative you get. And out of this combination of this past isotype with Otto Neurath, the Swiss graphic design tradition, and the thing that we said, actually, we don't want to say do's and don'ts, came up this new project, which started in the Swiss mountains 2 years ago. Surprise, surprise, we had COVID, so there was kind of a lockdown, and we decided to, with Nicole, to rent a cottage in the mountains, and we went there, and actually we didn't have the idea. Actually, we're not brave enough to think about the book. We were just thinking, how do we actually work, and how can we make our approach and the way we work accessible? Because we are also, since 6 years, we're teaching students at university. So we were thinking, how can we teach them faster? And what we did in this amazing landscape is we started seeing, and that's especially Nicole's thing, she started seeing diagrams everywhere she went. She saw diagrams on the tree, she saw diagrams, tree maps, bubbles, and everything. So actually she saw data. What we started is to sketch down some basic principles that we said, okay, what kind of diagram types do we have? What kind of visual parameters like color, pattern, outline, line, what do we have? How do we organize it on the paper? So actually we started bringing them down to the most basic ingredients, like a recipe. We started to bring them down. And in the end, we understood it that we are on the way to create something like, you know, the chemistry periodic table of elements. Something like that, we were going that direction. So then the process started, and the process is in our office. So we created a lot of different ideas, and what happens first, and kind of the first step of reflection, is reorganizing and looking what happens if we reorganize the ingredients. So you can see a bit that we have been working. Okay, I'm sitting, but kind of working. Nicole is working. No, just joke. I've been also working. Yeah. So we have been reorganizing and looking at the things we have. And actually, we have reworked the system 4 times. Because we thought, okay, what's the best way to explain what we actually want to achieve? Then came the question of data. The question, what data do we use for our book, for the information design? How can we explain it? And we just realized that using data like the SDG data from United Nations or any kind of data, it's already quite complex to imagine what that number means. So we said, let's invent something super simple where somebody can relate to it. And what everybody can relate to, own family. So what we did is we invented a family. This is just a kind of invented representation of a family. And what we have is we looked at, we invented a story about a family, 2 families, family Wagner and the family Brown. Brown coming from the UK, Wagner's coming from Austria. And then we also looked statistically, 200 years ago, what were the most kind of top names in Austria and in the UK. And by that mixing, we created this super random family and made this family saga. And based on that, we had this table, and this table is going through the whole book. So actually what you see, you have the surname, you have the first name, you have the place of birth, you have the year of birth, you have the where did they live, the hometown, then when did they die, gender, where the first generation, second and third. So actually super simple data coming from a text. And with this data set, I know it's super simple, but with this data set, we work through the 200 pages of the book. So every visualization we do it with this simple data. How do we do that? First, we said, okay, we identified we need the data. So that's kind of these data dimensions. The data dimension is surname, first name, year of birth, and so on. We have the diagrammatical dimension. I will show you now. And we have the visual dimension. So these are all the elements. Each of these little boxes and squares is an element. we have the structuring, and through combining them, you create this new multidimensional visualization. And then still the question is it readable? But what we want to say is you can combine and create millions of different diagram types. Diagrammatic dimension. The diagrammatic dimension is actually meant to be the mathematical principles, to say, how do I translate quantity? Quantity by typically line length or surface size or the pie chart. So actually everything which is in the blue area is actually this statistically or mathematically known diagram types. So that's the blue area. On every page, we show first this one. This is the icon, like a very simple representation. And then here you have always this example of this family represented that 4 persons lived in Paris, 4 persons lived in Vienna, and 2 lived in London. So actually we always have on the left bottom side of the page, as you can see them, on every element you have on the bottom, you have the one-dimensional super simple representation of this principle. So with this, we collected 25 blue elements. Then we have the red. Red is actually about the graphic, the perception, the visual. We call them the visual dimension. The visual dimension, we distinguish between, let's say here, in this case, this is a representation, an icon for color change, distinction by color. What does it mean? Let's say the brown, the British one, they are the yellow, there are 3 browns, and there are 7 Wagners, the red one. So distinction by color. And through this, there are also a lot of different other distinctions. Let's say that you have an example for saturation or distinction between 2 visually distinct distinction by form or by organic or geometric or by line color or by line thickness or pattern and so on. So all these things, and always with an example on the bottom, all these things, we created 40 elements, or we identified 40 elements in this dimension. So actually you take blue, you take red, combine them, and something else comes out. And then we have the green dimension. The green dimension is to say, how do we organize now, let's say, these lines on paper? So let's say in this case, we took the normal bar chart and we said, okay, let's put it from the center and reorganize them circularly, always with the same distance between the lines. And with this, we identified through different designs, we identified 25 different ways to organize your new elements on paper. So you can group them, you can sort them circular, and so on. So we have here, and we identified 15 of these. So what's happening then? This is just we have 80 elements in total. This is just one part of it, but just to imagine. So you have the blue one, you have the red, and you have the green. And then you take out these elements, and this is again the family, and this is the last part of the book. So in the last part, we start combining always the same data, just random, taking different elements, combining them, and looking what's happening. So what we have here is blue, the line length for the age of the 10 persons. Then we have the color for family, so the blue and the red. We have the way how the line looks like, dotted or how do you say, like not dotted line, a dotted line for gender. Then we have the detail, the ending of the line, which is indicating the hometown. That's the 4th dimension. And then in the 5th dimension, we are splitting this actually bar chart into 3 different generations and showing that there was the first generation with the most upper one, we have the second one, and we have the 3rd generation. So actually with this, we made it with 4 dimensions, a 4-dimensional diagram type. And with this, and the next pages after, we are creating more and more. So these are just some examples, but it's always the same data. It's just a different kind of combination of elements. So basically, that's the book. There's a little video. So kind of it's out now. These are, you have first the elements, first the data, then the elements, and then the examples in the end of the book. Yes, so that's our experiment of the last 2 years. That's the book. And I'm also getting to the end. So we are trying to create a new hashtag, which is called Modular Information Design, or MID. You can find more about our project and things on Superdot Studio. And last but not least, there is a special code. We created a web shop, which is called shop.superdot.studio. And for you, the audience and everybody who is now watching, until Saturday, there is, if you type in this discount code, when you choose the book, so actually you should choose book plus poster. So we are now receiving beautiful big posters with all the elements on them. So you will get with this code, you will get the poster for free. So that's it. I'm curious if there are questions.
Yes, so do we have any questions? Yeah, please, Sean.
Okay, so you couldn't hear me because I wasn't speaking. Hi Darjan, it's Mushan. So I have a question for you. First of all, the book looks great. We're already we're mumbling here that we need to order it for a library in Shinkar, which will happen. I'm really interested in this assignment. I have two questions actually. One, when you're teaching with, have you started teaching with a book before it was published, and have you tested it with students? And the second one is, it looks like a great way of opening your mind to visual representations, but have you sprinkled it with a bit of like when to use this, when not to use this, or you said you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. But my point is, like, did you include like things like how are channels being rendered, like what is more effective for this, what is less effective for this, and if you haven't, I would love to hear more about that approach.
Okay, cool. So two questions. First, yes, we have done, we did the class, I think 1 month ago. So actually we just kind of gave them the spark of the idea to have it really the elements. We didn't give them 80 because I think for the beginning of like first years, dealing with 80 different possibilities is just too much. So actually we just took out five from each, and we said, let's start mixing these 15 in total elements and seeing what happens. And that's leading to the second question of, are there rules? And basically, of course there are, but what we actually want is that you experience the rules yourself, what works and what doesn't. And we actually always just say, be fast, try to sketch a fast experiment, and ask somebody from your neighbors or in the class or somebody a specific question out of that data, saying, Nigeria, do you see something happening with Nigeria? So like a specific content question, and see if that thing that you created is readable, and if there is something special which this way of depiction is highlighting. So basically, it's really, we will see what the future brings. But currently we are really thinking of, let's just kind of let the people experiment and experience themselves if something works and doesn't. So no rules.
Okay, thanks. We have one more question.
Hello, my name is Boris. I'm a data scientist, and there is a notion of grammar of graphics in my world at least. So I suppose that you are familiar with that, and like, how does your system interplay with it? So grammar, graphics, I mean, it's just a separation of data, geometry, and aesthetics.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So it's not that we actually didn't look around who is doing what, or what kind of also, I mean, my background is also more kind of business informatics. Actually, I looked into all these books, but the point was just that they are really not inviting, they're technical. So actually what we did is also taking out from everywhere the really basic principles and enriching it with this red and green area, and trying to create a new combination. It's not that we say that this is the complete and the perfect thing to use. It's just our way to try to bring it down to something very simple, where also designers, like we are working with designers and design students, and maybe new target groups could get attracted to this. And it's not solely for data scientists or people who are familiar with mathematics. So actually what we are trying is a little bit to democratize, or to open up this field for a bigger field, so that it's not just a little niche.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's